Hello, everybody. We are very close to the 2-year anniversary, folks. I can't believe it. Got a special episode planned for that, so stay tuned. Mother's Day and Father's Day special episodes as well, very soon as well. Did you guys know that when GDP was created, they debated including invisible domestic labor in it? I did not know that. My guest today is Jess Weisz, creator of RuleBreaker, a resource for working parents and mother of two. And that's just one of the many interesting things we talk about today. We talk about capitalism's effect on the family structure, how to rewrite the rules of being a working parent, developing self-love, and much more. My name is Anthony Franzese. You're listening to the Successful Working Parents podcast, where we talk to working parents about how they're able to balance it all and still thrive. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe. Anyway, on to the show. Welcome back to the Successful Working Parents podcast, the podcast where we talk to successful working parents, if you could believe that. My guest today, she is the creator of RuleBreaker, a resource for working parents, mother of two, ladies and gentlemen, Jess Weisz. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, excited to talk to you today. So if you would maybe just share a quick background on your career thus far.
Woo. The career has been a cornucopia, but I would say as it relates to RuleBreaker, I was really good with following the rules when it came to my career. It was, let's progress. So I worked at McKinsey out of undergrad, then went to a big bank and did strategy and all the big projects that the executives were really excited about. And then I started to realize that they were really just joking, and nothing really innovative happened. So I left and went into tech, got the pin of or the badge of the venture capital backed tech startup, and grew the team, pivoted, replatformed, raised some more VC, left that, did some stuff, various other things, entrepreneurial and otherwise. And as my first child started to grow a little and I had my second, I started to realize that this whole career ambition was a little overwhelming and a little too much for what the reality is of working parent life. So I would call myself career-wise a classic blue chip. I know how to make a mean PowerPoint deck and
Excel skills.
Yeah. Turned platform creator.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely gonna get into that. The one thing I talk about a lot and I hear a lot on this show is that jump from 1 to 2 kids that seems to make people really just rethink their careers and just their relationship to their job. And I'm just curious from your perspective, what was it about that jump?
I mean, totally, and it's interesting because I had heard that on a recent episode that you did, and the person said I think it was great, where it was like before you were 2-on-1, right, and now you're man-to-man combat, not that
Yeah.
whatever, and which I think is correct, right? You have less time for yourself. Your partner can't cover you.
Yeah.
And it relates to something that a dear friend of ours said when I was pregnant to us, which was your anxiety just plummets, right? You know that the weird sound they're making at 2 a.m. when they're 3 months old is perfectly normal, right? Versus when I was with my first, like sending videos to my
you're like staring at them while they sleep and stuff.
Oh, recording it and sending it to the midwife. I went even to the next level.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this normal? So your anxiety plummets way down, but your exhaustion is through the roof. And that's where you start to realize all of these things that you want to be doing or trying to do, these ideals you're living up to, are just completely impractical for the reality that you have on your plate with 2 kids.
Yeah. So that brings us to RuleBreaker. So tell us a little bit more about, I assume that was the genesis for wanting to create it, but tell us a little bit more about what it is and how it came to be.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with, I guess, what it is essentially this concept that the rules for working parents were not set up for us to thrive. We're under this heaping pile of expectations, have a high flying professional career, be an Instagram worthy parent and a self-care guru. And if you try to live up to all of those, that is a recipe for burnout. And instead of what I think the majority of what at least I saw out there, and I'm curious what you see is, there's a lot out there of telling us how to be more, better, or different, right? How to live up to these ideals. And I'm actually saying, let's start with the premise that, first of all, you are enough, we are enough. And second, deciding which rules that we want to break, hence rule breaker, and asking ourselves this question of, did I agree to this rule? Did I agree to this standard that I'm like so ferociously trying to live up to every day and just like ending in exhaustion?
So what's a good example of a rule that doesn't make sense?
Yeah. I mean, uh, so the thing is that they all depend on you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's put it to put the piece around around work, right? So the rules around work are money and power are the ultimate goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you need to hustle and you need to be obsessed in order to hit those achievements, right?
Yeah.
But you can't do that when your kids need daily watering, right? Like, it's not like you can like go and hustle and do and then come back in 6 months and be like, I forgot to water my plant and well, I'll
Right.
just get a new one, right?
Right. Right.
4:30 comes around real quick for daycare pickup. And so I think one of the rules, as an example, is not setting boundaries on the amount of energy and time that work takes in our lives and feeling guilty for that, or hopping back on at 9 o'clock. And I think a lot of parents either do that, or they internally berate themselves for not doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm actually starting with, and I say, is that something you want to do, and then therefore you need to restructure your life in another way? Or B, if that's not something you want to do, how do you release yourself from that guilt?
So why do you think things are this way? Like, how did we get here where the rules are set up not in our favor?
uh Short history on capitalism. I don't
Yeah, I don't know how much time we have, but
No,
yeah.
no, no, I'm teasing. I mean, the basics is it is capitalism. It is how our economies are structured. If you think about what shows up in our GDP, let's start with our GDP, and then we can go to corporate profits. But when GDP was initially created, there was actually a debate about whether you include the free labor that you do in the home. And it was decided, as we now know, that we don't include that, right? So it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Everything trickles down from that, right? So how we calculate EBITDA, these are all fictitious things, but they don't match with the reality of where we're actually spending our time.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it may sound a little unconnected and esoteric, but it is these all of these rules came from us as humans, right? Like, we're the ones who decided don't reheat my fish in the microwave at the office,
Yeah.
right? Like,
That's a good rule though. I support
it's a
that one.
good rule. That's
Yeah.
one I vote for keeping as someone with a severe allergy to fish and seafood.
Oh,
Um,
damn.
but right, all of these things we created, right? Like GDP or how we calculate it is all stuff. And so we have lost the value that families create.
Yeah.
And so we get to this point where it's like, um uh the value isn't captured. And then I also think that we've moved to a point where we really, really, really value more.
Sure.
um and I
More new, better, like.
More, new, better. And what happens when you need more, new, better? You have to work more. And what happens when you work more? You have less time for family.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's also lots of other demographic things. We're having kids way later. We don't have the village, right? Grandparents are older. But
Yeah.
I'll pause there because I don't. Yeah, there's.
So do you feel like the solution could be to rewrite some of these value equations, or do you think, or is your solution more geared around just helping people understand how the system's set up so that they can stop trying to make it work in there?
So I think both, and the nuance to your first. So first, for sure, I start with the premise that you have to understand how the system is set up, right? Before you can address the problem, let's diagnose why it's happening. And whereas I think a lot of stuff out there points at you are the failure, Anthony. You are the worthless piece of whatever,
Wow,
because
call me out.
because you can't have a promotion every 2 years.
Right.
I'm totally joking.
Yeah, yes, of course.
Um, uh, that so that it is actually not your fault,
Hmm.
right? That it is you are not worthless. You are enough. This is what's happening. Understand the system. And then the second is yes, you have to rewrite the rules, but you have to rewrite the rules for yourself, because the reality is society is going to take a freaking long time to change.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like we're going to all of a sudden start measuring GDP differently. It's not like all, we see this in, I hope you can edit this out.
I can, yes.
Going to turn my phone, my computer notifications off. Um, it's not like overnight we're going to all of a sudden decide that workplaces everybody should end at 4:30, whether you have kids or not, because the reality is you should be part of the caregiving community, whether you have kids or not, whether it be, if you have only nieces and nephews, you're there to help out with dinner. If you have aging parents, you're there to help with what they need, etc., neighbors. And we can see this with the return to work, right? How quickly we forgot the value of working flexibly and remotely and having the opportunity to work there and in the office.
Yeah.
Um, so the reality is that these rules at large, society's rules, are going to take they will not change in the lifetime that we need them in the time we need them to. So
Hmm.
it's about questioning ourselves and saying, what rules do we want to sign up for?
Yeah. So what are we to do about this? Like as an individual, and then maybe like what do you think companies could be doing more to do?
Yeah, I mean, let's start, I guess, let's start at the individual level. Um, for the individual, it is first understanding what are those rules, learning how to spot them, learning how to understand where the pressure is coming from. Are you trying to live up to something that you've been told is the right thing, such as getting a promotion every 2 years, or striving
Hmm.
for that bigger house, or making sure that the cupcakes are perfectly immaculate, home baked for the birthday party? And then at an individual level, once you've kind of learned to spot them, say, is this something that matters to me? So as an example, something that really does matter to me is the food we eat. So I do spend time. I'm okay with ending work at 4 o'clock every day so that we can have a hot home cooked meal on the table when my kids need to eat at 5:30. Um, as a result, I then have adjusted work. So somebody who used to work at McKinsey, it took a
Yeah.
lot of restructuring in my brain to be like, no, Jess, you are not an abject failure for taking it a little slower in your career, right? Especially
Yeah.
seeing all of those LinkedIn updates.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And that's what I've built RuleBreaker on, which is I have the content in the course to take you through, here are the rules, here are what rule breakers are doing, and then the self-reflection to say, what matters to you?
And then do you advocate for what companies could be doing differently, or do you think that if everybody individually kind of takes care of this, things will be different?
Yeah, I certainly do. And I think I don't take it naively, if you will. I think companies play a huge role because they are the ones that set the work parameters and create space for caregiving and self-care, which includes connecting with friends, includes connecting with partner, right? And so yes, I think companies, there's a huge place for organizations, whether it be normalizing 4:30 ends, 5 p.m. ends, end to days, no emails past a certain hour, um, uh, supporting caregiving. Wouldn't it be amazing if there was a daycare in the office? If you're going to ask for everybody to come back, put a daycare there. make the total time spent trekking around the city easier for your working parents. And so I think workplaces play a huge role, and there's a lot they can do from a policy perspective and from just the way they work to change the dynamics within their. It's kind of like because each company is kind of like their own little micro society, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They create their own rules for them, for their workers, and there are great organizations I've seen that are doing that for their team.
So, as someone that's putting out a lot of content on this topic, what are you finding is resonating the most with audiences of working parents? Like, what do they seem to be the most interested in, or what are they asking the most about and hungry to learn the most about?
Yeah. I think the first that people is resonating is like, "Oh my god, how do you see me?" Right? It's tapping a nerve of feeling seen, feeling understood, in terms of the pressures, in terms of the overwhelm and I just feel like I'm playing a losing game,
Yeah.
right? And then the second one, I think for sure is, I would say there's a few themes. One is productivity. Everything feels like you have to be, you know, using and optimizing to the max. And if you are not, there's something wrong with you. And that's obviously exhausting. There's a great book called Do Nothing, which has a lot of good information on why that is not productive, but also just doesn't lead to great quality of life. So one is productivity. Two is that we are the problem to be fixing versus understanding that this is a social issue. It's a systemic issue. And I think working parents feel a little bit of relief that it's not us that is the problem, that we're working within a system that is broken.
Yeah.
And then the final one is this concept of more versus enough. And pausing to say, what do I have enough of? Do I feel enough? Can I, is my house big enough? Is my salary sufficient enough? But also, am I just as a human enough in that sense of self worth versus always looking to be more?
I mean, how do people overcome that? I think that's a very common thing that people struggle with, and it makes sense that it's resonating when you're putting that message out there, because you're right. Like, society does sort of push us all to like try to like climb the ladder or achieve more and be better. And so, how do we start to let go of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the trick, which is it's all internal, right? This is a personal change thing, and I think it starts from uh, understanding and uh, there is no silver bullet. Is what I'm going to say, because I think the answer you want is like, well, just follow these 3 steps, and then you find, all of them automatically have self love.
Yeah.
The reality is there is no silver bullet. The Every day, every hour, you will be faced with this challenge of feeling not enough,
Yeah.
and that's what I write about is a constant reminder that you are enough. So every email newsletter that I send out, I always end with sending enoughness. um in that, yeah, like I have a horrible answer for you, because there is no pill you can take, there is no 3-step, you know
No, yeah, it's like the answer. It's not the answer you want to hear, but it's the truth.
it
Yeah.
is. It comes, I have here's a good one, and then it's just like small things. I have a dear friend who has introduced me to this practice that she does, which is every night she says, "Good night, Amy." And
To
who's
herself.
Amy? It's herself.
Out loud.
Yeah. And she says, "Good night, Amy, and I love you, Amy."
That's nice.
Right? She tucks her kids in and she says, "I love you" to them, and then she gets them to say, "I love you," and then their own name, right? That's her shtick.
Yeah.
I used to write what was called pillow notes, And I would, for somebody on my team who constantly underestimated herself, and I was like, if only you understood how amazing you are. And so I'd write her a note and of all the reasons why in that particular moment I thought she was amazing. And I said, tuck it under your pillow. And so, and absorb it. You know, that like silly idea that if you just slept on your book, you would, you wouldn't need to study and it would be absorbed into your brain. Um, so certainly there are little things that can increase your sense of self-love. And I can list them all, but basically it has to come from a ritual, a regular practice, a constant reminder through various ways that you are enough, just as you are.
So how old are your kids?
6.5 and 2.5.
So are you starting to think about, at least for the 6.5-year-old, like how you can start to instill some of these things in them? And I think that that's a big part of it. Is not just how do we overcome it, but how do we set up the next generation
Totally.
to handle this stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. The first thing that came to mind is probably something I love doing and I always feel a little bad about, but, or might be controversial, which is, I think this notion of perfection, right? And this idea that you can achieve some sort of pinnacle ideal, right? We all strove to be Sheryl Sandberg, right?
Yeah.
Like that was a clear goal marker. Um, and every time she struggles with that type of thing, which was, oh, this isn't good enough, I'm not good enough, or this person has something more than me, I frankly tell her, yeah, that person does have more. And you know what? Somebody will always be more, better, different than you. Like, there will always be somebody faster than you. As soon as you are the fastest in the world, somebody will come around and be the fastest. So, how do you find contentment within yourself and not look to those external markers for validation? And maybe, I'd welcome a child psychologist's opinion if
Yeah.
anyone's listening to
Yeah.
holler at me, Jess, you're screwing up your child. But I remind her frequently that there will always be somebody better or have more than you.
Yeah. If you
Um,
if you disagree, please email us and let us
yeah,
know.
totally, totally.
No, this I like that. And it reminds me of something similar that's been on my mind is like the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, and like not just telling. I mean, this has been studied. Like when you tell kids that they're smart and that's why they did well on a test, they develop this fixed mindset, as opposed to if you tell them that they tried hard on something and that's why they did well, they develop more of a growth mindset. I feel like it's pretty similar and something I'm definitely trying to be conscious of with my daughter.
Totally.
She's a little young for that, but now she's at the point where she's surprising us with what she can say and like what she can point to and like the words that she knows. And so I think even like your first thing is be like, you're so smart, you're so smart. And you could see how that would just kind of set them up for a life of just thinking that they're smart.
Oh, 100%. And if she's the first, and if she's the like, is your child the first, and for you, and like the main baby of the family, the extended family?
Definitely our first. And yeah, I would say, yeah, main baby of the extended family, at
Then,
least on one side.
yeah, then they're getting all the attention, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what happened with mine. And now I have to, like, versus my second, she will do her thing. She will sit in a corner and read her book, just pleased as punch. And my first, like, can't be alone for more than 30 seconds. And it's like, hey, did you see what I did? Did you do? Because she's so used to like me being like, everyone being like, oh my God, you pooped. Like, this
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
miracle, right?
Yeah. I
Um,
wish I still got praise like that,
yeah, right?
Well, I remember being, I was the firstborn, and I was pretty smart in school, and so I think I suffer from this where people just told me I was smart, but I wasn't like you crazily gifted, and so I kind of just coasted by, and then it didn't catch up to me until like college when it was like, oh, you actually have to try stuff.
Totally, totally. And so yeah, I totally do that with my eldest particularly, which is when she shows me something, do you like it? And I say back to her, it doesn't matter what I think. Do you like it? Are you proud of it? Did you try? And switch it from her seeking external validation for internal validation.
That's good too. Yeah, I wonder what people think about that one.
Yeah. I mean, because that's the whole self-love. That's the whole, are
Yeah,
you enough? No one is going to tell you you're enough.
yeah.
You has to come from inside.
I have this theory that like our parents' generation was really concerned with giving us a life better than they had, and to them that was external stuff, right? So like a better house or just whatever better stuff. And I feel like our generation is so worried about like the psychological well-being of our kids, and so we're trying to think of like, how do I make them like psychologically better, not necessarily like a better house and a better car and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is more of an emphasis on that, perhaps with our generation. I don't I mean, there were child psychologists galore when we were kids,
Yeah,
right? And even before. I would say that it's just the volume of all of this stuff is increased on all the things
yeah,
because of social,
yeah.
right? So you go to your Instagram feed and you'll see all the child psychologists and all of the whatever's, influencers talking about how to raise your a socially, emotionally, um, sound human. But then you'll see, dude who sets up his kid's birthday party, like with like everyone gets their own little individual tent, and they each have balloons, and they have a little tray with all of those
Yeah.
decorated things. And the mom, I once saw an Instagram of a mom who made this like it had stem and leaves and whatever, and a place um for the flower to come. And she got her kids to come out with their little like fake watering can, whatever, and they planted Cheerios.
Oh my
And then
goodness.
in the thing, and then you know what grew the next day? Donuts on this like homemade stem with leaves and whatever. And it was like they were making a donut, and like it was just like such a thing. Like the artistic production on that is like kind of like what they do on Gabby Cat.
And how
Anyway,
old is your kid that they're going to even remember this donut tree? You know?
well, and the whole point was do something to create memories. I was like, "Oh my god, the only memory I will have is like slave laboring over in my arts and crafts table at
Yeah,
10 o'clock at night to do this."
yeah.
And so, to your point, I think I kind of feel like both still exist, and unfortunately, the volume just is way higher. Um, and so you kind of have to tune out sometimes the donut garden
Yeah, I guess that's true. Like the
making
parties are more
people.
elaborate. Like there are a lot of externals that are also being driven here. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about just being a content creator.
Yeah.
So it's hard, right? So you just make something and you just put it out into the world. You hit send and you just hope anybody looks at it or clicks like on it or God forbid comments on it. So like what was your experience like taking the plunge into doing that for the first time? Was that something that you had experience with in the past, and like just tell me how the early days of that were?
Oof, that was hard, because I'm not naturally on social. Like, it was 2006, whatever. I was graduating from undergrad, and like I didn't have a Facebook page. I didn't have a Twitter feed. Like, and it's even when I was in banking, I wrote the strategy on social media and how we should use it as a bank, and I wasn't using it.
Nice.
Um, um, so I am by nature a very private person, um, when it comes to sharing stuff.
Yeah.
What I am not, though, is I'm not shy on my opinions. And so that's what I've leaned in on, and and my main platform is LinkedIn, where I felt the most comfortable. I was the most active because I felt like it was professional, and it was yeah, I didn't like sharing sort of my private personal stuff. And I would say that I actually went through a process with a coach a year ago where because I kind of was like, I have this stuff in me and I want to get it out. And but there's like this block. And what I was doing myself, it was perfectionism. I was holding this massive high standard of like, oh my god, what if the world turns on me because I wrote the wrong thing in this one post, whatever. And so it's a daily reminder to myself that like my world will not collapse if you know one post happens to tick somebody off. um and then the nice bit is there's been fantastic response, so that just keeps my energy going.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, my experience is that like at least at first, like nobody really cares actually. Like
No,
you're so
100%.
worried about it and no one really gives a shit what you're doing anyway. And I think that's like been my biggest like takeaway and things I share when people ask me about it is like, yeah, no, you care so much more than anyone else does.
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And remembering that is key.
Have you ever had something that a piece of content you made that you're like really put thought into and you thought it would crush and it was crickets, and then like vice versa, something like random you did and it just like absolutely crushed it?
I would say 99% of what I have done to date has like been cricket. No. um, yeah, I put a lot of effort initially into my newsletter. And this was
Mm-hmm.
before I had like niched down into working parents with my rule breaker
Mm-hmm.
philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And I put a ton of effort, and then it would be like, whatever, right? Um,
What was your initial concept when you started making content?
it was much broader. It was around challenging conventional thinking in business and in life. So it was everything from renewable energy in indigenous communities who aren't connected to the power grid to women in the workplace. Yeah, it was broad reaching. Um, and then I would say the thing that really has kind of got me going, that caught on fire and in a good way, and gives me a lot of energy is I did a few of these day in the life on LinkedIn, and within a day it got 1 million views, and they're up to like 10, more than 10 combined, and so I think people just like my little sarcastic observations on working parent life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you never know what's going to hit. I mean, I put a
Yeah.
lot of clips out from the show on, and sometimes I put a lot of thought into the clip I choose and it doesn't go anywhere. And then I think our most viral clip was not even about parenting. It was actually with my wife, and she was talking about how Gen Z doesn't do certain, or millennials can't do certain things on their phone. Like Gen Z is like literally like writing papers on their phones now,
Yeah.
like buying plane tickets, and like people like in our generation, like you have to buy a plane ticket. That's a full laptop activity.
Oh, yes.
And
Yeah.
I think it just, again, it just resonated with people online and they just loved it. But yeah, you just never know what's gonna pop off.
Totally. Totally.
Okay, I want to move into the final segment called Jess's Advice Corner. So I'm going to ask you for some
Oh,
advice out of your topics.
okay.
Well, first, let's just start with what advice would you have for someone that wants to start creating content?
Do it. Just do it. Uh, and do it, but and then I would say tinker, test, and throw shit at the wall. The amount of stuff that I have tried is ridiculous, and it's not about whether it works or not. It's about what you've learned from it, and you just keep moving forward.
What is your best piece of advice for working parents?
Ask yourself, did I agree to this rule?
What advice do you have for someone that's feeling like they're not being a great parent lately?
Uh, That's a big one. 'Cause I would ask, like, why? Why are they feeling like they're not being a good parent? Is their kid actually having outbursts and what have you, or is it something that you are holding yourself to a higher standard? Um, and if it is a standard that matters to you, well, then you need to change something. I think this is gonna be a longer-winded answer, so I apologize, but I think there's a lot of people that will say, "Oh, I'm not a good enough parent, and I really need to spend more time. I wanna spend, uh, every day reading with my child, working on her reading," right? It's not reading bedtime books, but it's when she is, alert and capable of really trying, and then they continue on with their same work schedule and they don't drop a client because that's a good hour every day, or they don't drop a work project, or they don't set boundaries with their work and expect that things can just fall into place because you will it to be, or you've proclamated that this is your goal. I think that parents highly overestimate the time that they have and underestimate the energy and time that is required to do the job that you want to do right. And so if it is something that you feel it is important, right? If you've gone through the exercise and you've said, oh no, I'm not beating myself up as a bad parent because I'm holding myself up to a external standard that, I don't agree with. Okay, good. Disagree with the rule, start breaking it. If it's a rule you want to live up to, you have to change something. Time has to come from somewhere.
What advice do you have for self-care?
Don't do it about making yourself more, better, different. Do it because it helps you be the more authentic you.
If you had to recommend a parenting resource other than RuleBreaker, what would it be? Whether it's a book or an app or a Instagram account?
Big Time Adulting. I really like her. She's on Instagram.
Okay. Shout out Big Time Adulting. What is the best advice you've ever received?
What is the best advice I've ever received? Oh, suck it up, buttercup is the one thing that came to my mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes that's what's appropriate,
yeah.
Other than that, what advice would you give to your former self?
You are good enough just as you are, and to remember that, and that life is about living, not about rushing through and performing.
Yeah. Okay, last question. By the time this episode comes out, let's say my daughter is going to be about 20 months old. So, what advice do you have for me as the father of a 20-month-old daughter?
It fucking Oh, sorry. Are we allowed to swear on this one?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Being a parent of a young baby,
Yeah.
a tall it fucking sucks. I just know that.
Yeah.
Just know that you are it is frustrating and exhausting to the fullest. And we weren't, I don't believe, meant to raise kids like this by ourselves in our own little four-walled house with
Yeah.
no one else around. And so know that you are reacting naturally and there's nothing wrong with you when you feel exhausted. And so if you can, what can you give up on? What can you tip genuinely? I don't advocate for like don't be a crappy parent, but I do advocate for lowering standards.
Man, I wish we talked a few days ago. We just had a full week of the flu, and it was a rough week at home. She's finally back at daycare today. So
You're done. You're
Yeah.
done. You can't do anything.
do you think that 6 is easier than 2?
From a capacity perspective, 100%. 100%. And of course, you get into different things, right? But I feel more comfortable with the emotional conversations than the just grueling task of, "Can you please eat this? Can you please eat this?"
Yep.
Like,
That's where we're at now.
and yeah.
Yeah, and they can't respond fully to explain
Oh,
themselves.
all they can respond is throw themselves on the floor in an absolute tantrum because you want to give them the bear cookie than the, like, camel-shaped,
Right. Yeah.
animal cracker.
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, Jess, this has been a lot of fun. Where can people go to learn with you or hear more about you? Anything you want to share or promote?
Yeah, RuleBreaker.co. That's where to find me.
Okay, RuleBreaker.co and LinkedIn as well, right?
LinkedIn as well, Jessica Weisz. But you can get there from RuleBreaker.co. I have a working parent playbook and as well a 101 course that I call. It's an email-based course. And it's all designed for us. It's real talk. It's consumable, and it helps you get into all of the stuff that I've been talking about.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to all that in the show notes.
Amazing.
Jess Weisz, everybody. Jess, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
All right, take care. Bye.
Ciao.